Hi, Andrew. How is everyone?
Doing good, thanks. How about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm at my mum's place in Bega Valley, so the internet might be a bit more shaky than normal. So apologies in advance for any robot moments. Is anybody still in Dubai that made it over to COP that's joining us? No?
Yeah,
Tennant did
we're all
say
back now.
Okay. Tennant, I think, is still there. He said he'd try and join us, but it's a bit early and the negotiations went late. So we'll see. Hopefully, we get a slightly exhausted Tennant joining us to give updates from the ground. I've promised him lots of caffeine.
He got a good night's sleep the night before, so he was fully rested when he joined us for our final briefing yesterday. I've never seen a more relaxed and reclined Tennant in my life.
There you go.
It's most amazing.
Well, that sounds positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for jumping online and joining us for the final quarterly roundtable of 2023. It's great to see so many of you familiar faces that we've been collaborating with over the past couple of years, and some new faces too going into 2024 and new exciting climate ambition raising initiatives. So welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Cliff. To those of you I haven't met yet, I am the director of the Better Futures Australia program. I am currently based on the Ngarigo People's Country in the Bega Valley, but typically I live and work on Yuggera and Turrbal People's Country in Meanjin and feel very privileged to live on that beautiful country and enjoy that in my spare time. So please do, everyone, jump into the chat and introduce yourselves and share the country you're joining from today. We should also have, depending how travel is going up to Cairns with Cyclone Jasper doing its thing, reminding us all of the Mother Nature and climate change that we're living in. Uncle Ray Minikin, the co-chair of Indigenous Peoples Organisation, is hopefully planning to join us. So he'll have a report back from the Pacific gathering that took place ahead of COP, and then also some updates from the First Nations representation there. So hopefully that happens. Otherwise, we've got a little video clip that he's shared that we'll share the link with you all to have a viewing of that at your leisure. So today's meeting, we are focusing on the outcomes of COP28, and we have a number of stellar people here representing different sectors and interests to give their insights and perspectives on that. But before that, we'll also just do a quick recap on the intent of these roundtables. So today we have a range of the representatives from the sector working groups and partner organisations to the Better Futures Australia program. And we'll have a bit of a session to hear from those working groups and sector representatives on the advocacy priorities and expectations for the Australian government as we head into 2024. And we'll also have our excellent new colleague. So hopefully most of you have met Jordan Hodgson on the call with his BFA shirt on, their Better Futures Australia shirt, who is our operations manager. And we've also got Kira Denham, who may be a new face to many of you, who's on board to lead the events coordination and partner engagement in the lead up to our September Futures Forum next year. So very keen to look at how we can share that platform and provide that as a moment for all of your great initiatives to see how we can collectively raise ambition on climate further in Australia. So we'll have a bit of a session towards the end of today's roundtable to pick all your brains and capture your amazing insights for how we can really make the most of that. So we'll begin with a COP28 report back, and today's session is also being recorded. So that is to be shared as an unlisted YouTube with the BFA members, so that they can, those that missed us, we've had a lot of apologies from people traveling to various farewell and Christmas parties and things like that. So a lot of people have actually sent through some notes to try and give updates on what they're doing. So we'll also share that as a report back following this meeting in the standard summary and YouTube recording with you all. So we also have a potential Better Futures Forum partner, Alejandra from the Monash Sustainable Development Institute, that'll be joining us to share with Kira some insights on how we could potentially plan some activities and events in the lead up to and during the Better Futures Forum around how we can use that to really back in the wellbeing economy that Treasurer Chalmers has been pushing. So that should be an interesting discussion. So let's, now that we've got many of you on the call, let's dive into the COP28 outcomes. Very keen to hear from those of you joining us that were there on the expectations and what it might mean for Australia. So we have perspectives from local government, civil society, and the business and industry groups. So I'll just double check if we have Uncle Ray joining us. Don't think so. Okay, so we've invited a number of experts to discuss how the Better Futures Australia community can positively influence the post COP28 outcomes for Australia's ambition. So the role of Better Futures Australia as a alliance of non-state actors to really feed the ambition loop, show that subnational governments and private sector actors are going beyond and over delivering on Australia's fair share of the Paris Climate Agreement. So our focus is on enhancing the role of non-state actors in Australia's climate initiatives, and also making sure that we are aligning with the ambition and expectations of the global community, particularly in light of potentially co-hosting the global climate negotiations in 3 years' time with a Pacific neighbour, the COP31. So that's going to really provide some opportunities for all of us to do what we can to make sure that Australia puts our best face forward and avoids greenwashing, and make sure that we have the right case studies and champions to share that platform with potentially Minister Bowen as the or someone else as the COP president. So Jordan, I wonder if to kick us off, there was a LSIP gathering that Kathy Etic, the co-chair of the Indigenous Peoples Organisation, with Pastor Ray Minikin, ran back in, I think it was October, in Cairns, to really shape the Pacific and First Nations perspectives and how they are engaging with the Australian government on COP. So we'll just play a little segment from that in Uncle Ray's absence. He sends his apologies and is on his way to visit family in Cairns. Thanks, Jordan. And we'll share this link with you so you can see the whole clip.
All right, we'll hit play. Just let me know if you can't hear the audio.
In these particular regions, particularly for Indigenous Australians, we know how to look after country. We've been doing it for 60,000 years. It's not new knowledge, it's old knowledge. It has to be brought in here to be mixed with the new knowledge, and how we marry that together is a challenge, because some of the issues and the challenges that we see are not of our own making. We didn't create a lot of this stuff. And we don't know how to tell the ones who are doing the damage, time to stop, time to change, time to re-examine, reinvest in some other ways of doing these things here, but let's do it as quick as we can. And most of our nations and peoples in this particular region aren't rich nations. And many of us have been exploited so much. And so the damage has been great. we have been.
Thanks, Jordan. I did just receive a text message from Uncle Ray, so he might be trying to join from the road. So we'll see if he jumps on in a bit. But next up, I'd love to introduce you to Jessica Robbins, the Climate Futures Lead at City of Hobart Policy Lab. So I met Jess probably about 2 years ago, and she's such an inspiration. So Jess is working with the Lord Mayor of Hobart, Anna Reynolds, who wears a lot of hats, including with the Global Covenant of Mayors and other global local government initiatives. And Jess, I hear that there were some positive outcomes, particularly for Australia, from the Local Climate Action Summit, something to do with a CHAMP pledge. And I really would love to hear your perspective on what local governments in Australia can be prioritising to leverage the COP28 outcomes for driving more ambitious national climate action heading into next year and potentially a federal election. Thanks, Jess.
No pressure in a few minutes. But yeah, Palinga, Jess Robbins. So great to join you all today. So yeah, I think this year's COP was a really fantastic opportunity for non-state actors, but particularly for local governments. Then it was the first time that local governments and subnationals were really recognised as part of the main program as COP. We had as part of the Local Climate Action Summit in the VIP plenary room, which was quite special. And then there was also an urban ministerial on urbanisation and climate change. So both really fantastic opportunities. The Local Climate Action Summit, of course, was supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies with the COP president, which was great to see, who, like Bloomberg Philanthropies, also provided the funding to support the Lord Mayors, etc., to attend. So that was really fantastic to see. And really helped to put our issues more prominently in the agenda, and resulted in, I think about 70 countries now endorsing a coalition for high ambition on multi-level partnership for climate action, the short version being CHAMP, with many plays on that, of course. But why that is important is that it really is now a way of recognising national commitment to collaboration with subnational actors. And so after some strong lobbying from our Lord Mayors that were present in at the COP, the Lord Mayors of Hobart, Melbourne, Acting Lord Mayor Chan from Sydney, and Nuatali Nelms from Newcastle, some solid lobbying, good collaboration with BFA, reached out, got also endorsement from ALGA in support of the CHAMP initiative, and then had some meetings also with the Ambassador of Climate Change, which was great. So Australia then signed on, and I did just see a photo of Chris Bowen sitting back sort of leisurely signing the CHAMP initiative at the early hours of this morning. So that's really wonderful to see. And really for us, like for local government, it's, obviously a commitment like this isn't going to change the world, but it's a really, really important acknowledgement of the work that we are doing, and gives us a really good hook now into how it is that we follow up with the federal government. For a long time, through the work of BFA, through Cities Power Partnership and many others, we've really been sort of advocating for this. We really urgently need coordinated support for knowledge sharing between local government, but really importantly is that way of having a really strong partnership with the federal government and other layers of government across Australia. And so, how is it that we put in place those sorts of long-term financing mechanisms, etc., to support action, particularly ahead of COP31? So do check out the CHAMP initiative as it does relate to the states and local governments as well, and certainly ahead of the federal government's bid to host COP31 with the Pacific. It's really clear that the federal government will need communities on board to host this. It will be an election issue, and so we really want to position local government as being really engaged, as really helping to bring on board communities in building our social licence, etc. But also as part of really being part of building relationships with the Pacific as well. And so it was really fantastic being at COP and just being able to have some of those conversations with various friends and colleagues from the Pacific about what they wanted to see for COP. So for Australia, if Australia hosted a COP with the Pacific, and just some of the things that I had heard in those conversations were, can in any way that we're leading any sort of engagement, really inviting the Pacific in to actually really lead that conversation, making sure that any issues or stories that we're talking about really start from a Pacific story. And so, a Pacific lens of really sharing why an issue is of relevance globally, but let's see that first through a Pacific lens. So that was some really good takeaways that I had in those conversations. And just a point for us was that for our local government group anyway, like in talking with the federal government, they were really abundantly clear that for us to really get any attention or sway with the federal government, that we really need to have ALGA always on board with anything we're putting forward. And then secondly, any Pacific endorsement will really add any weight and influence to what we're requesting. So they were sort of just some of the high level takeaways there from my experience at COP28. And it was just really wonderful to participate, to see that sort of momentum, having, people like Sharon also there. Like we just had such a groundswell of mayors and really fantastic people on the ground to have these conversations and build partnerships. So looking forward to seeing where it goes next. Oh, and I should say, on the next steps, we just got back, well, I got back last Friday. We will be working with our mayors through like ICLEI and GCOM to then figure out how it is that we build on this momentum and taking forward what we can. Also, really fantastic models to point out. Denmark, really fantastic. 92 out of 96 of their municipalities have got a climate action plan in place. Something we want to model in Australia.
That's one of those tourist destinations or less climate policy wonks want to just spend weeks there to examine. Thank you so much, Jess. That was an amazing report back, and very exciting times for multi-level governance potential in Australia to really start rolling out some on-ground solutions. So next year will be very exciting, working with our amazing members of the Local Government Working Group and all of the cross-sectoral opportunities to boot. So next up, we have the stellar Erin Ryan, the Senior International Climate Campaigner with the Solutions for Climate Australia program at Climate Action Network Australia. So Erin was at the Dubai COP for the first week, working on various initiatives, and also has been tirelessly working to support the Climate Action Network Australia members and Pacific partners over at COP in the meantime. So Erin, thanks so much for joining us. Considering COP28 outcomes, what changes should Australian civil society organisations be advocating for, particularly to ensure that Australia is aligned with the Paris Climate Agreement to limit warming to 1.5 degrees? Thank you.
Easy question, right? So how are we all going to save the world? I'll just try and get to that in 2 minutes. I'll try not to be too lofty here, though, with a caveat that it probably will be quite lofty because I've sort of been engaging very much at that high international level, but I will try to bring it back to stuff that's relevant for Australian organisations. So I guess to just start answering that question, I'd probably like to start by just kind of setting the tone for civil society at this COP. So as CANA, we are linked into CAN International, which is, a body that has particular observer status with the UNFCCC. It's quite a hefty body in that place. And as such, CAN and the CAN network, we were really at the forefront of establishing a fossil fuel phase out as the litmus test for this COP. And, we weren't just asking for any fossil fuel phase out, we were asking for a fast, fair, full and funded one. So on the ground, we were pushing for that by engaging directly with the negotiations. We were in the plenary making interventions. We were holding bilateral meetings with a really broad range of delegations and negotiating blocks. We backed in that ask through our actions on the ground. So we were really proactive in mobilizing civil society actors to create a very visible and vocal expectation that fossil fuels and human rights were going to be at the forefront of this COP. And we also advanced this by doing what we're there to do, which is serving as the essential accountability function of the COP, really uplifting communities that are on the front lines of not only climate impacts, but at the forefront of climate ambition and innovation in their thinking. Overall, in terms of where we got with that litmus test, the pendulum is swinging our way. So the outcome of the global stocktake document that came through yesterday, you know, it's far from perfect, but the main takeaway for me is that we've kicked in the door here. And after many, many years, we've finally had fossil fuels named and shamed in that document for the first time. And that carves out space for us to tighten that text next year in Baku, as well as in the intersessionals, as well as in our work, you know, day to day on the ground in Australia. So zooming back, you know, I guess to shorter term priorities for Australian civil society, a couple of things I would prioritise are really honing in on a number of dangerous distractions and limitations that are in that outcomes text. So there's wording in the COP text around limiting ambition to our energy systems. And that's wording that bears more than a striking resemblance to the way that Australia watered down ambition in the recent Pacific Islands Forum outcomes document. So that's something that we should be proactive about in terms of trying to seed a wider definition of energy systems that also incorporates exports. After all, you know, we want to be a renewable energy export superpower, right? We should be bringing that into this conversation. We also need to see that some of those distractions that are in the text, like undefined abatement, untested carbon capture and storage, nuclear, blue hydrogen, all of that is scrutinized and ultimately removed from texts like this, because that creates the social and political license for a lot of that stuff to occur, as well as expansion of transition fuels like gas. So we really need to kind of hone in on where that is sort of permitted by the text. Another massive gap this year that I think we need to be proactive about filling is on finance. So ultimately, developed countries didn't put money on the table this year to support developing economies in their transition to renewable energy systems. So, you know, ambition on a page, it means nothing without the funds and the tech transfer to take it off the page. So we need to advocate for this. And in the immediate term for Australian civil society, I think that means backing up our previous support for Pacific ambition via the Port Vila call for a fossil fuel-free Pacific, specifically putting in place demands for Australia to contribute resourcing to the proposal for a regional energy commissioner for the Pacific in the upcoming federal budget. Back to COP process, you know, in the coming years, Assistant Minister Jenny McAllister is co-chairing the adaptation negotiations with the Environment Minister from Chile. Australia is also overseeing preparations of the new big global climate finance goal. So we need to skill up to engage on this stuff in the years to come, with a particular view to defending the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities and securing public finance at scale, rather than allowing countries like Australia to offshore their responsibilities for adaptation funding to the private sector. So this is some of the stuff that I think is really essential to shoring up Australia's bid to host a COP, particularly one in partnership with the Pacific. Just on partnering with the Pacific, having spent, you know, the vast majority of my time over the last couple of weeks working really closely with my Pacific counterparts, I would just end on the note that they are in a very politically unique and sensitive position where they have been granted a lot of power as part of that COP31 process. The Pacific has historically showed huge amounts of climate ambition and leadership. I think we would all do well to remember that it was the Pacific that achieved the 1.5 degrees of warming goal when 2 degrees was on the table, and that would have been devastating for their communities. Similarly, loss and damage was a big thing this year. Well, Vanuatu invented that term back in 1991, a long time ago. It's not new. Developing countries might be backing it now, but again, this comes from Pacific leadership. So I think we need to engage carefully, responsibly, and from a place of genuine trust and backing in of their leadership, rather than trying to sort of push our priorities on them. So when we are looking at that partnership, it should come from a place not of getting endorsement from them for our work and our priorities, but us actually flipping the power, reorienting our strategies to back in what they're trying to do, because they know what they're doing. They have huge amounts of power and leadership, and we have a lot to learn there. So yeah, I think that was a lot. I'll end on that, but happy to take questions.
That was a lot of helpful advice. Thank you, Erin. So please do, follow Erin's prompt there and add any questions into the chat. We'll have 5 or 10 minutes after we hear from our next excellent reporter backer, Andrew Peterson. So would love your questions for these amazing people while we have them online. So Andrew Peterson is, for those of you who haven't come across him yet, is the CEO of the Business Council for Sustainable Development Australia. Andrew wears a lot of hats and has decades of experience and expertise in the various climate and energy policy challenges and opportunities faced by Australia's business community. So Andrew, in light of COP28 and your experience in Dubai, what policy changes do you think are essential for Australian businesses to support the phase out of fossil fuels?
Thanks, Lisa. And I hope by having too many hats, I don't have too many faces. Not a good outcome. Yeah, let me preface it by saying what an amazing COP in so many different ways, not the least of which is the sheer number of attendees. And interestingly, one of the stats that jumped out at me was the virtual attendance. There was almost 10,000 people across the planet that dialed in every single day to something that was being done, either at a side event that was being shared or a negotiation room or the plenary. And I think that was emblematic of this particular COP entering into a very different phase, particularly post-COVID, of there being eyes not just on ground, but all around the world. It's an interesting takeout from a LinkedIn post by Rich Gilmore this morning around how many people were being represented at the COP by dint of the number of people that were actually at it. That included business. There was a big expose throughout the COP, both in terms of the role of the president and its proxy on behalf of its constituency during the course of the COP. But in one sense, coming into this COP, and I shared this with our members, I felt that it was going to be a disaster. So what we got was, in fact, surprise on the upside. And with that, the danger that a couple of us are starting to ask ourselves is, was it substantive or was it ephemera? And at the moment, I think it's not quite able to be discerned just yet as to whether or not we land on one or the other. But to the extent that we take what the consensus delivers for the outcomes for the next period, and by that I mean the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 24 months, and then obviously out into COP31 and 2026. There's, from a business perspective, a really interesting observation around segmenting the notion of transition away from fossil fuels in a far more rapid way than I think anybody has any legitimate expectation in perhaps any other sector. And that's because business came to this COP, I guess, in two ways. The first was that it wanted to play a substantive role. And in that regard, I'm talking about the work of Women Business Coalition, amongst others, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development through the Breakthrough Agenda program, through the work in food and agriculture that it played a role in, accepting that there were obviously other voices there, particularly in the fossil fuel sector. But it was, I think, instructive to see that, at least on the second aspect of that, which was the area of accountability and performance, you could be under no misapprehension at this COP that business understood that it had to show performance in relation to net zero, and that it was calling for greater substantive reform in relation to what net zero actually meant. And so we've seen the work of the UNFCCC with key players around that program of work that has to be hurried along as quickly as possible, and therefore the role of the H-leg that was set up just prior to Sharm el-Sheikh is going to be on steroids, as my understanding, to make sure that there is greater clarity and certainty for business to perform against that kind of expectation. You've got the calls of organisations like Women Business Coalition indicating that the time for hiding behind industry associations was over, and that there needed to be a far stronger representative obligation of responsible policy engagement around net zero going forward. And I think that's going to be a key element of the work in not just Australia, but elsewhere, as to, well, what are industry associations actually standing for? If it is the lowest common denominator, that needs to be called out, because you've got businesses within some of these industry associations that don't necessarily represent that constituency. That causes a duality of purpose, in my humble opinion, that is going to have to be called out. The other is in terms of the words, I think, of Simon Steele at the gavelling during the closing speech, that the agreement marks the beginning of the end for the fossil fuel era, means that particularly business that's not in the energy sector per se is now of the view that they are equanimous. They don't really care where the energy comes from, as long as it is reliable, it is decarbonised, and it is a price that they can afford. And I think that behaviour is quite a transformation in Australia compared to a few years ago, where it was always linked with the notion that that would have to be fossil fuel based for any business to be able to take those three criteria in relation to the energy mix in their organisations. The key concerns that they still have, rightly so, are how do you account for Scope 3? And there was a lot of presentations done at the COP in relation to that particular issue, as were the building blocks of what transition planning looked like. And the other two aspects were the role of Indigenous peoples and local communities. I thought that was a genuine interest and concern of business, particularly as the conversation around 3 times renewables is going to require a new conversation with Indigenous persons and local communities going forward, particularly in Australia. It has to be done quickly, it has to be done equitably, and it has to be done efficiently, so if we are, as we've signed up to that particular aspect. The second was, and this was a kind of a breakout conversation for me, what's the role of AI? Business has got all terribly excited about it. The amount of investment across the world absolutely tramples all over climate transition at the moment. And so the question was being asked by a lot in that particular space, well, why aren't we bringing the two together? And what is the role of regulation? What is the expectation of the use of AI going forward in relation to energy transition? Nobody's cracked that nut. Our government has not yet really handled that one terribly well. It certainly hasn't put the two together when it comes to the conversation. And I think that that's one of the expectations. The last is, and it comes from a viewpoint of the BCSDA, is are our actual institutions in Australia fit for future purpose for decarbonisation? The concern that the role of the ACCC could actually act as a brake in being able to see collaboration occur within industry and sectors quickly, where they are very concerned about things like green claims, but also the notion of collaboration and using their market force in relation to trying to find innovative solutions and technology and find opportunities of financing at scale. We have to have a sort of a different discussion and narrative around those kinds of institutions. I call out also APRA and the RBA and others actually ready for what needs to be done in an accelerated form. There is a lot of conversation about the need for transition, a lot of conversation about the need for getting this done by 2030. But if we're moving into a program of work in relation to what the NDC looks like for 2035, we actually have to do that work right now. And those institutions, I don't think, are yet ready to be able to play the role that we need them to play to enable the robust framework that business needs if it's going to have effective corporate performance on climate going forward. Thanks.
Great insights there. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing those and going through the amazing COP circus for us to bring those back to us. I've just shared a link in the chat to our friends at First Nations Clean Energy Network have shared a project tracker as a bit of a monitor for community First Nations engagement in the energy transition, which is very helpful and just highlights, yeah, there is a lot of work to do and not just for First Nations peoples, but we're also all very aware and experiencing the pushback from regional and rural Australia with transmission and other pieces of the energy transition too. So yeah, a lot of work for all of us to do in how we can improve the participation and engagement of all Australians in bringing them on the journey to zero emissions. And business leaders have a very important role to play, corporate Australia, particularly in the energy sector. So thank you, Andrew, for all the great work you're doing there. Do we have any questions for our excellent COP28 representatives from different sector interests? We've got about 4 minutes more of their time to speak to this before we move on to the next item. Feel free to jump in with a hand raised. Yes, Monica.
So Andrew, in your opinion, how do you think the politics, we heard Bowen talk about and support the fossil fuel phase out, whatever language he used. I mean, how do you think that's going to translate as we think about ourselves as one of the third largest fossil fuel exporters? Any sense of where the corporate sector's at, for example, in Australia vis-a-vis the politics?
Good question. It is ever thus that we're going to have a segment of the corporate sector that is very much in tune with business as usual model and seeking to extract whatever value they can out of the capital markets for as long as humanly possible. I take, though, some interesting signals that came through during the course of the COP, the discussion that Woodside and Santos are talking merger. You've got other proposals around investment by major investors overseas as well as in Australia around the future of critical materials. And so I think that this notion that business is a 100-pound gorilla on the decarbonisation pathway is kind of an old narrative. I think that it is starting to splinter well and truly. And there are therefore slivers of sectors talking up their book. They are talking up the need and the rationale for them to have primacy in this transition portfolio. One of the challenges that was brought to the table was how does Australia get South Korea, Japan and others to actually help decarbonise, because that will be the solution, not in and of itself, not that it's not important, but not in and of itself to talk to Woodside and Santos about not giving them. There is a consumption production narrative going on here. And that's what pleased me about at least the early text in relation to the consensus, because it's introduced this notion that consumption is as much of a challenge as is production. And we have to solve it in both ways. I think the other from an Australian perspective is that I had a lot of questions about not so much the appetite for renewables, but yes, this issue of the NIMBY. And it puzzled me because it means that it's coming from somewhere that I don't know where. And these are international investors asking about the state of play in Australia. And the thing they lasered straight into was, well, how can we get approval if the state governments can't give effective approvals quickly and communities don't want it? And so it kind of goes back to Lisa's point a minute ago, that and it's one that the likes of Women Business Coalition particularly highlighted, which is this lack of democratisation of the energy transition in a lot of key developed countries. And they called out the United States in particular because there's this massive backlash in certain states in relation to, well, we don't want green industry coming in and taking our jobs. That's the new narrative. And it's like, hang on, we're building 1 and 1 to make 3, not 1.5. And I think that's something that we need to be alive to here in Australia as well, because I can see it coming down the line in the not too distant future, and it could be run by certain constituencies to slow down the accelerated state of decarbonisation necessary.
Some really helpful insights there. Thank you, Andrew, and great question, Monica. Thank you so much for jumping in with that. A huge thank you to Erin, Jess, and Andrew for jumping online to share that with us. Andrew and Jess, I'm hoping you can stick around for the sectoral discussion, but Erin, feel free to jump off if you need to, and thank you so much for sharing those perspectives with us and all the great work you're doing to support Climate Action Network Australia and the Pacific Islands CAN members in their advocacy efforts on raising global climate ambition. Thank you so much for joining us. So next up, we're going to talk about the 2024 Better Futures Forum. So Kira Denham, Better Futures Australia's Events and Partnerships Coordinator, will give an overview of the Better Futures Forum objectives and how we can use the moment next year to set expectations for the next term of government, noting that we're expecting the next federal election to be any time from, well, it could be August next year, but likely early 2025 is the dominant speculation. So I'll hand over to Kira. Thanks, Kira.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you here. Yeah, for those who I have not met yet, I'm Kira, coming from the Bundjalung Nation in the Northern Rivers, Northern New South Wales. And a major part of my role is planning and coordinating the Better Futures Forum. And so today we'd really, we're sharing the dates and launching the forum, and love to engage your expertise and different sectors in imagining this crucial event and what we can achieve together. And a good timing after hearing some great updates today from COP. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Yep. So the Better Futures Forum is CANA and BFA's largest public platform, where all of your hard work and collaboration can be brought together with other Australian businesses and governments, community leaders, to publicly announce commitments to more ambitious climate action and plan ways to collaborate together. Our 2024 forum will be held over 2 days in Canberra on the 10th and 11th of September next year, and will bridge connections between policymakers, peers within and across priority sectors, and unique climate champions, our Better Futures climate champions. And as Lisa said, 2024 represents significant milestones, including an updated NDC and anticipated federal election, hopefully 2025. There's some nice quotes here from our partners. The 2024 forum will be a really high energy strategic event, continuing the legacy of convening influential figures like the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Australia's Climate Change and Energy Minister Chris Bowen, who was at the 2022 event, along with all of these other wonderful people that joined us last forum. We had over 200 attendees. We captured 180 media stories, and we had over 75 different speakers. So the forum will focus on interactive workshops and really engaging talks and powerful networking opportunities to align sector and community leaders with government on crucial climate initiatives, and really shaping Australia's climate agenda. These are our key objectives. And we're really excited about the opportunity to make this the most diverse and impactful forum yet. The soft launch is just the very first beginning seed. So I'm really looking forward to getting your input today, and growing and with your input and participation. Your collaboration is really central to how we form this event, and love to get your input today during the interactive session at 1:15, and hopefully identify some other key priorities and actions that we can achieve. We're currently updating the forum website. You can have a look at that, but also please join our event page on LinkedIn so we can keep you up to date there. And I would now like to just share a quick video from the wonderful Nishta Agarwal from Climate Energy Finance, who did a short launch video for us during the workshops last year. Oh. Sorry, am I sharing the right screen? Ooh. All right, here's Nishta.
Australia has world-leading critical minerals reserves and has superabundant sun and wind energy to power our economic transformation. We are collaborating to call on the federal government to end coal and gas approvals and invest in a nation-building $100 billion Australian renewables industry package. This would onshore Australian industry, reindustrialise our economy, diversify our exports, create hundreds and thousands of jobs, and electrify our homes and businesses. I'm Nishta Agarwal, a finance emissions analyst with the think tank Climate Energy Finance. We're really looking forward to being part of the Better Futures Forum next year, side by side with hundreds of other leaders in the climate space.
And that was Nishta launching our forum. Oops, here we go. And back over to you, Lisa.
Okay, Kira, thank you. If you stop sharing screen, I'll stop the anxiety at looking at how many hundreds of tabs you have open.
Stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you. Yep, we're back to sharing.
Yeah.
There we go. Excellent, thank you. So the LinkedIn page has a save the date feature if any of you are hoping to join us, and also bring your initiatives and efforts to Canberra alongside others for that sitting week. And it's timed in September too, so that we can hopefully get some strong representation from the states and territories, noting that both the ACT and Queensland elections are to be held late next year. So that'll be the last chance to get all of the states and territories representing their governments in place of their political representatives. So really hope all of you can help to start informing how we can bring you in and have collective ownership of the Better Futures Forum next year. So we'll go to that after we hear some updates from our sector representatives today. So hopefully that'll also inform what the advocacy opportunities are next year. So as many of you know, but there are some new names on the call today, and thank you to those of you who are new to the space to jump online. For instance, we have Holly representing the Transport Working Group today from the Climate Council. So Better Futures Australia is a non-partisan alliance of non-state actors. So that is climate champions representing our ambitious approach of representing all industry sectors and geographic representation across Australian society and the economy. We're really working to show that Australians are ready to work together, including with all levels of government, to exceed Australia's climate commitments. Over the past 2 years, Better Futures Australia has conducted quarterly multi-sectoral meetings like this one. These meetings give us all a chance to pause and reflect on the positive developments underway and consider how we can collectively address any remaining obstacles in Australia's climate policy, investment and action landscape. Through the Better Futures Australia community, we're fortunate to work with various sector working group members and partner organisations and initiatives, including Monica, I see there, with the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance and the Sunshot Alliance and other initiatives that are out there doing great things. And we're really, as the Better Futures Australia team with my colleagues Jordan and Kira, we're here and dedicated to supporting all of you to see how we can work with government at all levels and see where there's opportunities to deliver that ambitious national response. So we have around 8 speakers on the call today to give updates from different sectors' perspectives. and really a round of laser talks, speedy updates and insights to help us all form a more comprehensive view of what's on the horizon for policy, advocacy and raising ambition in the climate and energy landscape next year. So first up, I'll hand over to to get us started, Emma Hoban from our Health Working Group at the Australian Hospitals and Healthcare Association. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Lisa. As Lisa said, I'm from the Australian Healthcare and Hospital Association, which is the peak body for public healthcare across Australia, and we've been part of the Health Sector Working Group for a few years now. So just a bit of an update of what's happening in the health space at the moment. So on the 3rd of December, at the World First Health Day at COP, Australia launched the first National Health and Climate Strategy, which is something that the Health Sector Working Group and many other people in the health sector have been working and advocating for a very long time. So that was really something to celebrate for us. Australia, along with 120 other countries, also signed on to the Climate Health Declaration, and along with other 80 other countries signed the Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate and Health, so the ATTACS framework. In the late November, the Health Sector Working Group also had a series of meetings with MPs to advocate for commitment to health-focused NDCs and to discuss the implementation of the health and climate strategy. So this will all inform our health advocacy goals for 2024, which are to support and constructively engage in the implementation of the National Health and Climate Strategy, to ensure that engagement and the commitment to the workforce and make sure that it is meaningfully enacted and implemented. This will include discussions with MPs around implementation to highlight its connection to the broader wellbeing economy agenda and the Measuring What Matters framework. We are looking for collaboration and partners across sectors to build on the Wellbeing Framework and the Measuring What Matters work as part of the broader implementation of the climate and health strategy. Advocacy to ensure funding to support the implementation of the strategy will be a priority in the lead up to the 2024 federal budget, because there's no commitment to support implementation currently. And our advocacy work will continue on the issues of low value care in the health sector, engaging the health workforce and addressing the carbon footprint of the health sector, which is significant. In terms of actual activities that are planned for 2024, there is a possibility or work happening behind the scenes to partner with Sophie Scamp's office and the Parliamentary Friends of GPs group to hold an event at Parliament early in the new year. And there's many other things in the works, but these will all hopefully come to fruition as the year goes on. So that's just a bit of an update for the Health Sector Working Group, and happy to take any questions.
Very exciting times for the health sector with climate ambition in Australia. Thanks so much, Emma. And a clear call out there to work with others in other sector focused areas to implement the National Climate and Health Strategy and build out the Wellbeing Framework. So hopefully we can work with you all to progress that collaboration. I will throw to Monica Richter next to give a short update for the corporate finance space, and also maybe some insights to current priorities for the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance, as Monica wears many hats, as I think you might need to jump off soon, Monica. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you all before the end of the year. I don't really have much to say on finance. It's probably more focused on a couple of the projects through the hats that I wear with MECLA, Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance. So it brings the demand and the supply side of the built environment together. So I think concrete, steel, aluminium, engineered timber, masonry, and bricks, aluminium, I've said before, and yeah, so on and so forth. So I think, you know, we've had, I would say, pretty good impact this year. You know, industry has been, particularly the leadership of industry in the built environment, has been well ahead of government. But the governments realise that in order for them to achieve their net zero decarbonisation goals around infrastructure and transport, bearing in mind that government agencies are spending multi-billion dollars on the infrastructure and the majority of the materials are concrete, steel and aluminium, that they need to work collaboratively with industry to help them develop the specifications, requirements, policies and procurement standards for that. So we've seen, the South Australian government, they've set an expectation now for their suppliers to have as a minimum an embodied carbon target as a prerequisite to tender for government work. We've got the New South Wales government, Transport for New South Wales and Infrastructure New South Wales. They've moved ahead on a whole range of both their decarbonisation and circularity commitments around procurement expectations as well. So I think when we had our strategy meeting a couple of weeks ago, the leadership team said, I think we've done the leadership. We've changed the game, changed the conversation in Australia, and now we need to be talking to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 contractors. And there's such a vast number of people involved in the built environment. 40% of Australia's emissions come from the built environment. So how do we actually build capacity, education, understanding, support, and engagement? And one of the ways we want to be able to do that, I guess, and demonstrate to government that industry is ready to make the change is what we're calling a readiness index. So it's an index which will pilot with Infrastructure New South Wales in the first quarter of next year to show how, on a dashboard, how ready industry is to be able to deliver low carbon and circular materials. So that's probably, one of the big elements. And then on the issue around steel, and, so Australia both manufactures steel, we import a lot of steel, but we've also seen over the last 12 months a real shift in the conversation around low carbon, so green steel, let's say, in WA with the development of, the building of a electric arc furnace being touted for Collie, as well as in Whyalla, and a lot of shifts happening in the decarbonisation of steel. And very briefly, just to jump to the point you made, Andrew, around the importance of Australia, Japan and Korea working very closely together to try and support their decarbonisation. I mean, it's a problem for them, it's a problem for us because we're such heavy fossil fuel exporters, to Japan and Korea and China. So we've got a couple of reports coming out in the first quarter of next year to talk into that issue, where Australia's at, a bit of competition between South Australia and Western Australia, what some of those challenges and opportunities are, and then we are going to be focusing on to the Japan, Korea story. We'll do some translations into their languages and hopefully do a bit of a roadshow. So when we're ready to launch, I'd love to come back and share more details with the members of the BFA as well. So that's probably two good updates to leave you with. Thank you.
That's very exciting. Thanks, Monica. And yeah, I feel like a follow-up with Kira just to see how we can amplify that to feed into the Better Futures Forum program too would be excellent. Thank you. So we've got Tennant joining too, so we might throw to him after the round of sector updates just to give some COP28 insights from Australian Industry Group. But next up, I'll throw to Holly for sharing insights on transport advocacy priorities. Thanks for joining us, Holly.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi everyone. I'm Holly, and also joining me from the Canada Transport Group is Soleil Schneider. She just started as the climate action strategist. So I'll dive right in, and I think maybe useful, we just had our working group meeting, so there were some good reflections on transport from COP. And there was a very small part related to transport in the global stocktake text, but it was mainly related to a transition to low and zero emissions vehicles. And I think in our working group especially, we need a high electrification, but also that mode shift towards public transport and active transport, which is something that we need to socialise globally and definitely in Australia. And I think beyond COP, Our key advocacy goals for 2024 will be around the Transport and Infrastructure Net Zero Roadmap and Action Plan, which is a bit of a mouthful. That is one and the same as the transport sectoral decarbonisation pathway. And really our advocacy around that is for it to be as comprehensive and as ambitious as possible. Also advocating around the fuel efficiency standards to be put in place as soon as possible with the strongest settings possible. And both of these, so the roadmap and the fuel efficiency standards, were meant to be released for consultation at the end of this year, but they've been postponed to next year. And I guess other advocacy goals are around the federal, state and territory budgets, and some of our groups will also be campaigning around changes to the fuel tax credit scheme, and looking to advocate that that be abolished for fossil fuel companies and redirected broadly to investing in our renewable future. And key activities planned are really mobilisation around those key policies. And our group also had a symposium at the end, not at the end of last year, that was still in this year, so in August, and thought it might, if of interest, be useful to share some of those top level findings with everyone quickly. I guess our key findings and asks which arose from that is that the electrification of the transport system is absolutely critical. And as I kind of alluded to before, it's not just about electric vehicles. Of course, they're very important, and Australia's lagging quite far behind, but it's also really about that shift towards public transport and active transport and rail for freight. And also a big need to highlight the co-benefits of a clean transport system, such as health, and equity needs to be central to all of climate action, generally, of course, but including the decarbonisation of transport. Sorry, I am speeding through this, but opportunities for working together across sectors, I think, within that transport roadmap / sector decarbonisation, we're really hoping to ensure that there's as much collaboration and crossover between sectoral pathways as possible. As I mentioned, the electricity sector is key to the decarbonisation of transport. And I think in some other countries' transport decarbonisation plans, they have explicit collaboration between relevant government departments. So the US, for example. Yeah, and that is us.
Thanks so much, Holly. That's really exciting, and very excited to see a national zero emissions transport roadmap roll out next year. So very keen to see how we can advocate across sectors to make that as strong a strategy as possible. And excited to introduce you all to Soleil, who's joining us on the call as Climate Action Network Australia's new transport strategist. Is that your title, Soleil?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think I have a broader title, but I'm going to be convening the transport working group going forward. So yeah, it just started last week, still getting up to speed, but you'll see more of me in the future.
Excellent. Welcome. Very good to have you here and working with stellar transport advocates like Holly. Thank you. So next up, we'll go to Imogen Jubb from Ironbark Sustainability to give some insights from the local government working group priorities. And we've also got Sharon online. So Sharon, if you have any additions, please do jump in. Thanks, Imogen, for joining us.
Hey everyone, it's lovely to see you all, and it's great to touch base with lots of you. I work in different bits and pieces across the space. So we've been working with the Better Futures Australia Local Government Working Group for quite a while, and some of the highlights from this year is the camp statement that came out of the COP that Jess talked about earlier. That's really great. I think a real key aim of the working group is to integrate local government, state government and federal government decision making in a much more structured and functional way, particularly for including local government ambitions and opportunities into the nationally determined contributions for the future COP statements. So on that note, earlier this year, the local government working group in partnership with, Cities Power Partnership and the University of Melbourne produced the Making the making hand, or I've got my timing wrong. The multi-level
many
governance
hands.
report. Many hands make light work. That's it. The many hands make light work report, which is to really advocate for that multi-level governance structures across local, state, and federal decision making. And on that note, we've also been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to set up better structures for advocacy with those 3 different levels, particularly with the Cities Power Partnership taking a sort of backwards step and looking to build better connections between ALGA and the local and state, the state local government working groups and building in that advocacy. On that note, we're also working with Better Futures Australia to produce a Australian local government climate review, which we'll publish in the second half of the year, which will really aim to focus advocacy on federal government in particular around approaches that they can take to support local government, and also for building the ambition and the expectations across the local government working group and local government as a sector broadly, so that the number of councils who are taking action at both the corporate and community-wide level is increased. We have seen a lot of change in that over the last 5 or 6 years, and I think both demonstrating the change that has happened to date and also advocating for the pace of change that can be taken with that support across all 3 levels of government is really exciting. My work produced the Snapshot Climate Tool, an update which now includes fugitive emissions and a emissions profile for every local government across the country, as well as every federal electorate. And those profiles now align very closely with state and national emissions profiles with the inclusion of fugitive emissions. So that's a great resource that's out there for anyone who's looking to do work in the local government or federal electorate space. Behind the scenes, we've also been building emissions databases that include about 60,000 businesses across the country, which represents about 1/3 of the emissions in Australia. And we are looking to partner with local governments to start facilitating better relationships with those businesses and better accountability for businesses to take more effective action, and for communities and councils to understand proportionally the emissions that come from specific businesses in their patch. And that's in part to lay accountability at the feet of the people who are most responsible for emissions, and partly also to sort of shift away from households being primarily seen as those responsible for emissions as well. So on that note, we have done quite a lot of work on the household electrification space this year and supported local governments to engage households in the energy transition and the electrification process. And that is excellent for householders as well, both in terms of co-benefits for health and comfort, but also their hip pocket and taking, saving those costs at an efficiency measure. It's also great for residents. But in terms of the emissions, it's a smaller chunk of the pie than the businesses are. So we're looking to sort of increase focus on businesses' accountability and avoidance of greenwashing as well. We've been working really closely with the Victorian Greenhouse Alliances as well, both in collaboration around that household electrification work and advocacy with state and federal government and things like the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and ACOS as well, in terms of ensuring support for vulnerable householders is included in the design of policies at state and federal level. Premium adaptation, that's still on the edges of our work, but it's something that could become more relevant over time. And I'd say as a vision, we're probably looking to have every council having both a corporate and community action plan that they feel confident enacting, and that builds on the evidence base of what is the most appropriate actions for councils to take, both at their corporate and community-wide scale, and working with state and federal government to effectively fund and resource the most effective actions that councils can take. So that's where we're hoping to go, and hoping to include those actions, both being able to demonstrate clearly the emissions reductions that come from those actions, and then building that into the NDC process. I think that's all.
Thanks.
Anything else, Sharon?
Thanks so much, Imogen. Yeah. Any additions, Sharon?
Yeah, Lisa, thanks for that. Okay, no additions to Imogen's report, but if you don't mind, Lisa, I'd like to also share some plans and perspectives for the coming year. Is that fine? Yeah? All right. Well, no, thanks everybody, and wonderful hearing your insights and sharing your plans for the coming year. I wanted to just reflect a bit also on the Dubai COP, and that it actually set the bar for multi-level partnerships and specifically the role of local councils. And so for organizations like ICLEI and our secretariat role in the GCOM, it obviously gives us something to start thinking about in terms of implementation steps. And particularly as we as an organization are about to embark on relaunching and strengthening some of our programs and our role in Australia and in Oceania. So there are a few takeaways from the COP, which we would be remiss not to use in our advocacy stance over the next year. The first is probably around the multi-level governance agenda in the outcomes text that we are seeing, and it aligning with CHAMP. But even where this was not looking so optimism, I think there's a lot that we can take away from the strongest language ever on fossil fuel phase out, and the opportunity for this peak body to amplify that local councils are on standby to partner with the federal government of Australia. And this is certainly a window of opportunity for us. We are also pleased that the small island development states in the Pacific gave inputs into several high-level interventions at the COP. And this is a huge priority for us, and we'll continue to ramp up on efforts and development efforts for that matter in our neighboring Pacific states. The themes of just transitions in the global stock takes was key for us, and working these into justice elements around the next round of NDCs, as touched on by Andrew. This is very important for us. And then it was also very encouraging to see the connection between the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis as we ramp on our Cities with Nature work. This is key also for us to continue in the Pacific, because nature-based solution is such an important adaptation response of theirs. And then I think lastly, we'll be watching closely the launch or the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and it deservingly being channeled towards the islands that need it most. And then I think, friends, on the prospects of hosting COP31 in the region, and for ICLEI GCOM, it would be a futile exercise for any campaign not to go in with the backing of our Pacific neighbors. So I echo those sentiments of those who spoke on that in the call today. And then finally, that for us, our advocacy is premised on working with other bodies and networks here. So looking forward to collaborating with many of you in the coming year.
Excellent.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah.
No, thank you, Sharon. And yeah, it's very exciting times for the potential for local action and collaboration with private sector. And yeah, we'll see with federal budget pre-budget submissions open until 25th of January, what the next iteration of the Household Energy Upgrade Fund and other pieces might look like. So yeah, that's a huge opportunity there for cross-sectoral collaboration, as we've seen through various electrification workshops and other things over the last year. So now I'll throw to Andrew to come in again with a quick update on domestic policy priorities in the coming months for the business community and any opportunities to work across sectors. And then Tennant will come to you too for some insights that we heard from Andrew and Jess and others at the start of the call on COP28. So very keen to hear your takeaways there and what's on the horizon for ambition in Australia. Andrew, thank you.
I think I'm exhausted. And, you know,
it's the end of the year. You can go on a break soon.
Tennant could probably speak on them just as effectively, if not more so than I could. I think rather than doing a list of them, because a number of them have been shared with all of us in relation to the consultations and working groups that, Lisa, you have very effectively corralled us to join and share. It will be interesting, and this is business. I'm speaking primarily in our constituency rather than necessarily the broader business community, but there is a fatigue in relation to engagement. There is a request for seeing action as on the basis of that engagement, but the desire in 2024, I think, is to really knuckle down the sectoral plans as quickly as possible so that identification of investment and innovation will happen as rapidly as humanly possible. I think the other that will happen next year as well, and this was an interesting sub-theme that I went to during the COP, was the role of trade. Trade in a net zero world, which it has not ever had its own conversation at the COP, certainly as much as it did at this one, and just the interest and preparedness of parties, including the WTO and others, ICC and WBCSD and IETA, and so many different panel discussions that were held at the COP that have incredible domestic relevance going forward, whether that is, and Tennant can speak much more effectively on this than I can, but CBAM had its moment in the sun during the course of the COP, but also EU restoration law becoming quite relevant now in the context of decarbonisation, as well as the role of the global biodiversity framework. And so I think it's less about the individual policy levers that will happen, because they will, but more so the mindset that will come as a result of coordinating them so that there's a coherent roadmap into properly informing the NDC. And I think that's exactly what business is now looking for, to then enliven the opportunity of collaboration, but more importantly, strategic partnership in what is going to be a lot in the expectation of a green economy emerging over the next couple of years in Australia.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And yes, Tennant, for those of you who don't know Tennant, he is co-host on an amazing podcast, Let Me Sum Up. You should all subscribe. And he is also the Director of Climate Change and Energy at the Australian Industry Group. So thank you, Tennant, for joining us in the early hours, still in Dubai. So Tennant, following on from Andrew, we'd be very keen to hear your thoughts on the main challenges and opportunities for Australian industries in transitioning to a low carbon economy in the post COP28 and pre COP31 world.
And can you hear me okay? Great. I was worried when I agreed to this, the COP might still be going on, that we'd be into our second day over. And it wrapped up, one full day over is not exactly quick by most people's standards, but like pretty smoothly, certainly compared to how it looked like it might go just a couple of days ago, and more smoothly than last year, which set the record for going over. So there's a lot in the outcome, and you have discussed many pieces of it. I'm going to talk mostly about the global stocktake and what it means for Australia, but happy to talk about any other aspects of it all or have a go, including, you know, the colour and movement. I will forego Andrew's dangerous temptation to talk about CBAM, but there are indeed some interesting things on that front. So the global stocktake was, I mean, you know, a lot happens at these things. A lot was on the agenda. To me, the GST was the point of this particular COP. It was the big thing that absolutely needed to get done and had very large significance, because it's the how are we doing under the goals of the Paris Agreement, and what do we need to do next exercise as a specific lead into the next round of nationally determined contributions, the targets that every country will set for itself, which have to be submitted in early 2025 and prepared really following this COP. I mean, everybody will be getting down to business back at home. So what was the GST going to say to them? What were they going to say to each other and themselves that would shape that process of the next NDCs? And I can go through the blow-by-blow drama of how it got to where it got to, and there's some interesting stuff in that. But let's just start with the output, which to me seems pretty strong and extremely useful. And as with all these things, there's always unsatisfactory elements and things that are not what you would want them to be individually. But I think that there's a terrific basis in this certainly for Australian domestic work and for many countries to focus their efforts as they develop these next NDCs. And I think that in sort of shaping perceptions, because the COP and the texts are such horribly complex and you know, diplomatic language things, that they need a lot of interpreting and framing for people. And so yeah, I would really urge people, I'll justify this optimism in a minute, but I will urge people to, when you go out and frame it for people, do paint a positive picture of it, because it deserves it, but more importantly, B, positivity with like content and purpose can be very useful in approaching all this. Okay, so what's in there? There's a lot in there, because this is covering how we're doing on mitigation, how we're doing on adaptation, how we're doing on finance. And I tend to focus, and a lot of developed country people tend to focus on mitigation. And there's very good reasons for that, including that the more mitigation you achieve, the less adaptation you need to do, and the less loss and damage needs to be financed. But even so, we're going to need to do a lot of adaptation, and there will be a lot of loss and damage, and the finance is essential to make any of it work. But on the mitigation front, the critical things to me that are in this final decision, which is the core of the UAE consensus, that's the phrase that the presidency wants us to all be using, and it's not a bad one. Firstly, the strong recognition throughout it of 1.5 degrees as, and I think we got slightly sick of this phrase as the COP went on, the North Star to guide us all. And they go beyond that to recognize, they're recognizing the science, that what 1.5 degrees needs as a global pathway is peaking of global emissions by 2025 and cutting global emissions by 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035 off a 2019 baseline. So in Australia, we are very familiar with a 43% target, but that's against a 2005 baseline. At a 2019 baseline, because our emissions have fallen since 2005, is a more challenging one. And a 60% 2035 target, I am told, I have not done the spreadsheeting myself, translates to about a 67% cut on 2005 levels. And that's before you take account of equity or different national circumstances, and broadly the ethical idea that advanced economies should take the lead, as we heard quite a lot from a number of developing country parties. So that illustration of or specification of what 1.5 means should be kept firmly in mind as we look to the other content, because all the other operative stuff around energy is framed with respect to 1.5. I'll just say one other thing. So this language was really controversial in the course of the negotiations. There was especially strong pushback about the peak global emissions in 2025 or by 2025 bit. And there were a lot of spoken arguments about that. The real reason why that was hard is because in order for the maths globally of that global peak to work, one country in particular needs to peak by 2025, and that's China. They are such a large share of global emissions now that you just can't make the numbers work unless they peak by then. And everybody knows that, even though nobody at any point in the negotiations explicitly said that. And China's not quite ready yet to formally make that commitment. They've got this internal process of modelling exercises to get them comfortable with that. A lot of people think that they actually are going to peak earlier anyway, but what's needed is for them to formally commit to what they are likely to do anyway, which, if you think back a couple of years, was a challenge that the Morrison government tried and could not internally get itself together to commit to what their numbers said they would actually do anyway. So there's some extra complicated verbiage around the peaking bit of text, but it's very important. Okay, the other thing, and this is the single most important thing in the whole thing, I'm going to talk about the energy elements, but actually this is the bit that matters the most, is paragraph 39 of the Global Stocktake, which is the push to nations to make their next nationally determined contributions 1.5 degrees aligned, and to be, I mean, this part is less significant for Australia, but quite significant for the world as a whole, to be all sectors, all gases, quantified emissions reduction targets. Now that text is not as strong in the, it encourages parties to do that. There's this whole hierarchy of strength of operative words in UN text, and encourages is not at the top of the very most strongest words. But it's like, it's amazing we got this there at all, and this is the kick in the back of the pants for all countries to get on with it over the next 18 months in developing those NDCs. And then the energy text is part of the steer or the guidance to them on the kinds of initiatives that are involved, or the elements that are involved in doing those 1.5 aligned pathways. So the energy text. This is the bit that got the most discussion and controversy in the course of the COP. And there's a bunch of things in here. There is a piece of text introducing the energy. There's a number of like sub dot points basically on energy related initiatives. And there's a piece of text introducing that called a chapeau, which is French for a little hat. And the little hat sits on top of the text and it shapes your interpretation of the text. So this chapeau is a lot better than the chapeau that existed in one version of this text at one point, which was horribly weak. What this one does is say the following things basically are global efforts that towards 1.5 degrees that countries should contribute to in light of their own national circumstances. Which is an important and clever compromise to get any of this in at all, because there were a bunch of countries saying, wait a minute, developing countries should not take the lead, developed countries should, or I've got very different circumstances, I can't do this. There was a lot of sensitivity. They found a way through that was not just blancmange. And the content of the energy, I mean, there's a lot of dot points. And a lot of people are worried about loopholes in dot points. What I would say is that all of the dot points together and the fact that they're all in the context of 1.5 degree pathways actually means there's not a lot that can escape through those loopholes. You've got collectively quite a strong set of efforts that countries should contribute to. So what's in there? The triple double is in there. So this is tripling global renewables and doubling the rate of improvement of energy efficiency. Every country does differ in their ability to achieve those things. By 2030, Australia's plans would have us in the region of tripling our non-legacy hydro renewables. In the long term, sort of the full Garno superpower would see us do something in the region of increasing renewables 60 times. So, you know, it's pretty big. But beyond the triple double, the other thing that got the most discussion was fossils. So fossil fuels had never been mentioned explicitly in a COP outcome ever before, which sounds weird, but that's the way it was. There was huge controversy over what way to refer to this. There was strong push for phase out language. There was strong resistance to mentioning fossils in any way. A strong line from Saudi Arabia and the other like-minded developing countries that the problem was greenhouse gases, not sources of greenhouse gases. And anyway, where they got to was that a global effort to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in order to achieve net zero by 2050. So is that weak? Is that strong? Well, it is restricted to energy systems. There are important non-energy uses of fossil fuels, which continue for what it's worth in the International Energy Agency's 1.5 degree pathway updated a month or so ago. Total fossil production and consumption goes down 80% by 2050. And a big chunk of what remains is non-energy use in chemicals and like road base and things like that. So this is not an unreasonable place to get to, transition away. It does not use the word unabated in that paragraph with respect to fossil fuels, and a number of high ambition countries did not want unabated in there, so that was a win for them.
Sounds like it was a real emotional roller coaster, Tennant, for those of you there, and reading the reports back from others to the description of everyone feeling angry and sad, and then flipping to relatively okay in the final plenary was really interesting to see. I'm just going to jump in, and I think that's that's a beautiful segue after all the updates we've heard, given that there's consultation open for various sectoral decarbonisation plans for Australia at the moment, and we're expecting an updated NDC next year sometime, and that's a lot of opportunities for all of us to collectively advocate and have a clear and consistent message around what the future for a zero emissions Australia looks like for business leaders, subnational governments, health sector and others. So that is an excellent segue to make use of the final 10 minutes of our call. I'm going to hand back to Kira Denham and introduce the Better Futures Forum potential partner, Alejandra from the Monash Sustainable Development Institute, working on the Wellbeing Economy Framework, to share a bit of an example around how we can plan some collective activities and engagement of General Australia in the lead up to a September forum, and really try and send a signal and a message for our expectations for the next term of government as we approach the federal election. So thank you so much, Tennant and Andrew and Sharon and others for sharing those insights to what's happening across different corners of society and the economy. Kira, did you want to say anything before Alejandra jumps in?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to give a quick, just before we kind of go into very short breakout sessions to get some feedback on what you think are the key objectives for the forum next year. We've got a great new advisory committee formed with the kind of very diverse voices from the network, including Heidi Lee from BZE and Mary Harm, Pacific Climate Warrior, and Monica from WWF. So this advisory committee have been discussing key themes and objectives for the forum, including place-based decarbonisation actions, the global spotlight on Australia, working towards the vision for COP31, the climate nature nexus, considering the global nature-based summit in October, as well as the wellbeing economy. So it's really bringing climate, nature and wellbeing together across the big ask in those place-based regional stories. So on that theme of the wellbeing economy, we have Alejandra Mendoza from the Monash Sustainable Development Institute with us, giving us her time today to talk about what they're working on with the Measuring What Matters initiative, and also the Transforming Australia report that tracks Australia's progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you're here, Alejandra, do you want to join us and kind of give us a feedback on the Transforming Australia report as a case study that will kick off our workshop for setting the agenda?
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Lisa and Kira, for having me today and inviting me to this roundtable. I will not cover a lot on the Transforming Australia report. I will mention a little bit about it, but I will talk a little bit more about the Sustainable Wellbeing Agenda. And before I start, I want to warn you, my presentation, I have a slide. Is that okay? Like, can I share the slides? Okay. And I want to warn you, my presentation is full of cartoons. And it's not that I am joking about this. It's just my way to cope with the seriousness of the issue, and it's the way to cope. So warning in there. And let me share very quickly my screen. So it makes me very excited to talk about sustainable well-being today, because at Monash Sustainable Development Institute, our main purpose is to advance the well-being of people and planet. So to talk about this is a passion of mine. And as you will know, climate change, and this is what you have been discussing today throughout the afternoon, it's a very complex issue, and it is basically it's a complex way of linking environmental, social, and economic dimensions. And as we witness increasingly frequent and severe climate events, we must recognize that these are not just environmental crises, that they are catalysts exacerbating global challenges such as food security, health, economic stability, and social inequality. So basically, climate change is touching absolutely every single aspect of our daily lives. And given that it's such an interconnected challenge, it's also a challenge that calls for a holistic understanding and response, considering its far-reaching implications on well-being. So the urgency that you have been talking about today around tackling climate change cannot be overstated, but our response needs to be as interconnected as the problem itself. So it demands, of course, a collaborative, multidimensional approach, intertwining environmental conservation with social and economic resilience. So today I will discuss sustainable well-being, so an agenda that not only acknowledges the complexity of these challenges, but also offers a potential cohesive strategy to address them, ensuring a sustainable and equitable future for all, which is what we all want. This is not news to you, but as you know, like one trigger of our climate crisis and the growing social discontent is that progress has always been considered as economic growth, and often this comes to the detriment of other equal vital aspects, right? So this is, in the first place, one of the reasons why we are in the situation that we are right now. However, in the last decade, governments have been acknowledging that this definition of progress is a little bit myopic. So we need to define progress in a more holistic way. And the good news is that they are talking about putting well-being at the forefront of policymaking or decision-making. And increasingly governments, not only governments, but increasingly societies now are recognizing that progress should be defined as a societal aspiration where the well-being of our communities is the ultimate goal. So well-being now is used as a measurement of progress and a goal of public policy beyond of that of economic growth. So it's like we are not only looking at economic growth per se, but also like the other dimensions that affect the well-being of people. But what is well-being? Like, does anyone know what is well-being? One person mentioned around like the wellness initiative of, I think, this famous artist that I forgot her name, but she has like this massive wellness industry, and seems like a lot of people relate well-being with wellness, which no, it's different. So there's no unified agreement on the definition of well-being. So Professor Herman Daly in 1992 suggested a societal overarching goal of sustainable well-being, and he framed it as a state of high quality, equitable, shared, and sustainable life that encompasses the three elements of a sustainable development: economy, society, and environment. And later, the Sustainable Development Goals that reflect the interdependence of these three elements were later portrayed as the pathway to achieve this sustainable well-being. And there's different governments or different countries, different organizations define well-being in very different ways, but there are usually three key perspectives informing these definitions. One is the subjective perspective. So basically, these definitions of well-being come from the happiness research and the drivers of happiness, of individual happiness. And basically, this definition of well-being focuses on the quality of life. And it basically comes from a self-evaluation of how do I perceive the quality of my life. And the policy implications of this type of perspective is that we can focus on foster, for example, mental health, or we can look at policies that foster work-life balance, social connections, a sense of belonging, and its drivers. And then there's a second perspective, which is one frame, the capabilities perspective, which is framed by the economist Amartya Sen. So this perspective focuses on enablers to be and to do. For example, I want to be healthy and I want to have a good job. So what are the capabilities that will enable me to, or what are the conditions that will enable me to be healthy and to want to get a good job? And basically, he defines well-being as the freedom to achieve what people value in life. So once you have those basic capabilities to to do and to be, then everything that you do with that defines your well-being. And the policy implications of this is basically we will have policies focused on access to quality of education, healthcare, income security, political freedom, and more proactive citizen participation. And then we have the third perspective, which is the indigenous perspective, and this has been around for centuries around, and they see well-being as embedded in culture and a way of living. And the way they see well-being is basically these relationships between humans and non-humans and how they relate to that, and how this relationship with nature frames all the values around how we live our lives. So the policy implications of this is clearly focusing on taking care of country and cultural values and relationality. So as you can see, like all these three concepts are kind of interlinked in different ways, but they have different implications. But something that it's quite obvious to me is how related they are to sustainable development principles, where we try to achieve this balance between the economic, the social, and the environmental sphere. And so what does it mean to have a well-being agenda in government, or when a government adopts a well-being agenda? So here I'm listing 5 principles, and these have evolved, and also depending on who do you speak to, they will have different principles. But in general, I think most of the narrative agrees that a well-being agenda is based on a holistic measure of success. So we are not looking only to economic growth, we're also looking at health, human capital, security, etc. We are looking at sustainability and long-term thinking. So we are not only considering what's going on with the well-being of the current generations, but also we have to be thinking about how the actions we do, how our actions today will affect the well-being of future generations. We, within this concept, it fosters or promotes an environmentally sustainable economy that operates within planetary boundaries. It talks about equitable distribution, so it's not only about like, well, we achieve progress, but progress has to be equitable. And it also promotes participatory democracy, because none of these will be feasible if we don't actually have more effective participation from the citizens. So how are nations embedding a well-being agenda? So I mean, there are many governments that are already trying to adopt some well-being frameworks, so well-being agendas. And here I have 2 examples of what it's not perfect, but it looks good, and what we should be aspiring for at the minimum. So we have the Welsh Future Generation Act. So the Wales government, the Welsh Future Generations Act requires public bodies to consider sustainable development and long-term impacts in all policy decision-making through the lens of 7 well-being goals. And these 7 well-being goals basically aim to improve the economic, social, environmental, and cultural well-being of Wales for today and for the future. And these 7 goals have been informed by the public. So Wales ran a 1-year-long national conversation and asked the residents, the citizens, like, what is the Wales that you want to see in the future? What is the Wales that you want to live in? So these are the 7 goals that became legislated, and that means that every public servant and every public program in Wales needs to be aligned with these 7 goals. Another key feature of this is that someone working in the transport department is not only looking at mobility, or is not only looking at outcomes that traditionally are only related to their domain. Like if a program from the transport department is being actioned, they need to justify how does that affect health, how does that affect prosperity, vision Wales, and how does that affect the 7 different goals that Wales have defined. So basically, it's a holistic way. It provides incentives for public servants and sectors to actually look at problems in an interconnected way. And another key feature of WELS is that the agenda, or the Future Generations Act, is stewarded by the Future Generations Commissioner. So this is the commissioner who will provide advice to government in terms of like, oh, well, these programs are aligning well with the goals, or we're not aligning this with the goals, so why are you doing this? Which is a very important role to safeguard future generations particularly. And then as a second example, we have the New Zealand Wellbeing Budget. So this was a pioneering governance approach where basically they reoriented the nation's fiscal and policy planning paradigm, explicitly centering it around broader indicators of societal well-being. And under the Wellbeing Budget, the government allocates resources based on how policies impact the New Zealanders' well-being. So basically, it's like if you want to propose a policy or a program, you need to justify how does that impact the well-being of future generations, and according to that, we are going to prioritize our budget. So these are like a few examples of how these things are working around internationally. And in Australia, in October 2022, the Treasurer in its budget papers included for the first time in the Australian budget context a discussion of how we measure our progress as a society, using a range of broader outcomes focused on well-being, and promoting this view that we need to have a more holistic measure beyond traditional economic indicators such as GDP. So in his budget speech, the Treasurer indicated that this marked the beginning of a new conversation with the Australian community on what matters for individuals, for communities, and for the environment. And they ran a couple of consultations to ask Australians what matters, what we should be measuring. Like we should start by measuring what matters, and with that we can move the conversation forward. So the first consultation, I think they got like approximately 120 submissions, I believe, mostly from social sectors, and several of the submissions actually requested that the Treasury broaden its consultation efforts to reach to a broader audience, and not only organizations that usually participate in this type of consultations. But after a second round of consultations, where seems like there was more diversity in terms of which types of organizations actually participated and made a submission, the Treasury launched the Measuring What Matters framework back in July. And the framework basically is framed with 5 domains, talking about like a healthy, secure, sustainable, cohesive, and prosperous society. And you can see the definitions they included in this picture. And these are like basically the 5 domains, and the framework is composed by 50 indicators. And this is a really first good step to acknowledge that, yes, we need to look at a more holistic vision of what progress entails, and how Australia tracks on these issues. But we have identified like a key things that are still missing in this conversation. So first of all, like what we would like to see is an enhanced vision through inclusive engagement. So similar to what Wales did, and recently what Singapore did as well, is actively involving the public, fostering a cross-sectoral perspective that encompasses all levels of government and is shaped collectively by Australians. So this could really serve as a platform to define the social compact for Australians, and what makes us be together, what do we want for our country. So we are inviting we have been nudging the government to try to build on that consultation that they did earlier in the year, to actually conduct a broader national conversation on this. And the second is consolidate the framework as an accountability mechanism. So setting clear targets, conducting inequality analysis, and integrating a future-focused well-being component into the intergenerational report. So in setting targets, I mean, I think you better know what the importance of setting targets to actually achieving things and providing a direction and a level of ambition. So for example, emissions reduction is one of the indicators that it's included in this framework. And in the statement, they say, well, we are doing better. We have been reducing emissions. Australia is actually improving on this regard, but as you better know than anyone else that we are off track to our to the desired targets, right? So if we translate that to all the 49 indicators, we really need to set up the level of ambition to actually know what is the level of action that it's needed, the level of change that is needed. So that is missing right now from the framework, and as well as a more detailed analysis on inequalities, but we know that Treasury is working on collecting better data to be able to do that better. And also we would like to ensure that this framework not only defines the well-being for the current generations, but also helps inform the well-being or shape the well-being for future generations. So we would like to see how this holistic framework or metrics are also integrated into the intergenerational report. And the third one is strengthening the governance for decision-making. And I think this is one of the most important, because basically it's useless if we just have a framework that just tells us how good or how bad we're doing, if we don't actually use it in a way that helps us shape or inform decision-making or prioritize what needs to be done. So establishing mechanisms to firmly embed the framework into decision-making processes and ensuring policy coherence for sustainable development, it's critical, because as you know, all these 5 domains are interrelated, right? So some are synergetic, some have trade-offs. So the way we really need to stop working in silos, and we need integrated decision-making. So if we embed the proper governance mechanisms, we can actually incentivize that collaborative approach to decision-making, and not only within government, but also across sectors. And oh, am I still on?
You are, Alejandra. We've got 2 minutes left, so we'll just quickly summarize.
Yeah, good. And no, so and finally is that, like, also it helps align basically the local agenda with a global commitment that we have, or the global commitment. And why is this important for you? Well, because this sustainable well-being agenda aids in crafting strategies that are responsive to both climate and societal needs. Like we need to avoid unintended consequences, and we also need to consider to promote policies that balance ecological integrity with socioeconomic welfare, leading to more sustainable and effective climate solutions. So that's why sustainable well-being, it's relevant for these conversations that we are having right now, because that will help us to actually shape that interconnectedness and being able to deliver more effective strategies for climate change.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. So that's a really perfect example of an issue that can bring everyone together across different interest groups and sectors to collectively engage in Australia's climate transition and the transformation that needs to happen across government, society and the economy. So very excited to see how we can work with you and others also working in the wellbeing economy space. I know that I've heard Andrew Peterson from BCSD and others speak to this as well. So some really great synergies to align around. And thank you so much to each of you for joining today's call. Apologies we didn't get to the breakout discussions that Kira was planning to run on, starting to pick your brains on how we can leverage the September Better Futures Forum. So we'll follow up with a couple of questions for each of you, and please do take the initiative to reach out to Kira for a one-to-one chat on how we can work with you and your organisation to share that platform in September, and also plan activities and events in the lead up to that to really make sure by September we're there with a clear case and shared messages and proposals to set the expectations for how we can all work together to deliver 1.5 aligned response to climate in Australia over the next term of government. So huge thank you to all of you wonderful to see you all and continue working with you all this year, and looking forward to continuing to build on all of the great collaborations and raising Australia's ambition next year and in the lead up to co-hosting COP in 3 years' time. So that's very close and a bit terrifying. So wishing you all a very safe, peaceful, relaxing summer break. And hopefully you get to spend some much needed time with loved ones, as I know many of you are guilty of being workaholics. So wishing you time to switch off and spend that time with your loved ones. And yes, please do reach out with any ideas and advice and suggestions, and also how we can support and amplify the awesome work you're doing. So thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.